tech tips session with myself, Kristof from ASF, with my colleague David Terza. How are we all?
Hi, everyone.
There is a lot happening in the tech world, isn't there?
Huge, always,
Crazy.
greater knots.
Yep, absolutely. We talk about changes in, like, for example, we'll talk about NVIDIA in a bit, Broadcom and VMware. We're seeing a lot of changes in cloud infrastructure, a lot around the data and analytics space, and the big buzzword, AI. Let's start off with this week.
It's 2 words, really, isn't it?
Artificial intelligence. This is true. So, buzzword that it is, AI has been driving GPU sales, so graphic processor unit sales, for a long time. The rise of NVIDIA has seen its market capitalization reach $2 trillion. Trillion, not million, not billion, trillion.
It's a massive number.
Crazy number. Now, reason being, why? Well, the scarcity of silicon in general and microprocessors has meant that the need for AI drove GPU costs up. Now, NVIDIA have always been the market leader in GPUs and have done so for at least the last 15 to 20 years. One of the things about that is that, yeah, sure, there are companies like Meta, there are companies like Intel, they're all doing their best to create, and in fact, Apple are also trying to create their own GPUs. Problem is they're so far behind, and eventually they will potentially leapfrog NVIDIA. But as the primary source of GPUs in the world, guess what? They're the ones that are driving the cost up. And as such, and the scarcity of it, and in fact, we're seeing a potential AI black cloud where the ability to actually process the amount of information that's required doesn't have the computing power in the world. So we're going to see NVIDIA rise, and it's going to stay that way potentially for at least another 2 years when other manufacturers and other companies will start to catch up. So hopefully we can see scarcities of microprocessors catch up and, supply chain issues being resolved. And we'll start to see a little bit more of a normalization possibly over the next 12 months. So good news on that front. Broadcom. We talk about VMware. We're seeing customers in the vicinity of 1,200% increases. You heard me right. 1,200% increases. They have been on plans that are no longer available and discontinued. And as such, we are starting to see customers get affected.
Yeah, look, I think it's everyone's thinking about this now, and the uncertainty around what's happening with my VMware environment. Be it, is the product still available? How much is it going to cost me? What do I do? It's front of mind.
Absolutely. And look, this is also affecting a lot of large cloud providers, and so doing. Their services that were predominantly VMware based are starting to look excessively expensive because the pricing has been restructured, and there are up to 200% increases on MSPs. Fortunately, we have actually got alternative services. If you are in the position where you'd like to hear about those, feel free to reach out. We are working with a number of global brands already to be able to move them off onto certain products that we can support. And by all means, that is going to really probably take up a lot of the market news space in at least the next 3 to 6 months, effective because of the fact that programs were terminated in December last year. Free versions are no longer available. You can no longer buy annual or bring your own licensing. It is now subscription-based monthly. So for more information about that, reach out.
Happy to help.
That's it. Now, interesting conversation. The Australian government has actually released some guidelines this week around the corporate responsibility, especially around boards for cybersecurity. There's an interesting conversation point, but the comment that I really want to bring to mind is boards have a key governance role to play in being aware of the cyber threat landscape, prioritizing cyber resilience at their organizations, and developing capabilities for the oversight of cyber risk and the effective responses to cyber crises. Now, this has only been released by the Australian government earlier this week.
Hardly new though, is it?
Correct. Now, there has been talk about these sort of regulations and guidelines. I mean, we work a lot in certain regulated industries where we've seen this come into play February last year, right? They had stage 1 restrictions applied in February, and then final restrictions were applied in August. And if you weren't compliant, it wasn't just a slap on the wrist. It is no longer a case of I'm not a target. It is now if and what do you do when? And I've said this a number of times. The Australian government is certainly making sure that we understand that that is the case, and it is boards' actual responsibilities to be able to address this. So it is an interesting framework. I will certainly post the link in the description below, and in fact, to give you a bit of comment about that later on next week. If you have any interest around this, please let us know. We certainly do a lot around the GRC, governance, risk and compliance space, and can also give you some educational material. Also partnering with our colleagues in Three Lights. Feel free to reach out to us with Benji. Benji, I'll tag you in this below because I know you'll want to comment on it. But it is no longer an option, is it?
It's not an option. It is a must-do. If you haven't been thinking about it, get going. Why are you taking so long?
One of the key topics, I guess, on that is make your reporting really clear and visible to the boards as well as senior management, right? So if you need some help with that, let us know. We're always welcome to do. But it is up to both IT management and the finance departments to be able to start bringing this to the attention of the boards. It is now more than ever a real liability because the fines are actually going to be against the persons themselves on the board. So please take a moment, read these new guidelines that have come out. They will be in place very soon. And I think it's great. It's a benefit to businesses, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
We're struggling to get certain things approved by board level because of the risk. Right? It's no longer an option to take the risk. It is something that is being applied by the government.
Yeah, protect your business, protect yourself. It's basic stuff. And, some of these things that you need to do to fix it aren't that complicated. And so it really is just understand it and then, take the appropriate action.
Fair point, And if you are interested in any of these sort of control mechanisms or the frameworks that can be applied, please feel free to have a look at the ASD Essential 8. That is a great place to start. Definitely lots of easy ways to, as you said, to apply controls, mechanisms, restrictions.
And look, some of them aren't expensive either. I think people panic that when you're looking at your cybersecurity that you're committing to really big dollar numbers. A lot of the fundamentals are not expensive to do, and you really should be doing them. And just like I said, get educated, and you'll find out it's not as big a problem as you think it is.
Hashtag MFA everything.
That's right. Yeah, that is the most straightforward one that you can do that will increase your security infinitely.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, to the fact that recent research has found that only 30% of Australian organisations use MFA, that's multi-factor authentication. So the second way of validating you as a person, not just your password. So something you know, something you own. So please, by all means, turn on multi-factor authentication on all your platforms. Certainly makes a huge change. From a personal perspective, use password managers where possible. Don't use your web browser password manager. Use password managers where possible. And that way you are using long characterized passwords or passphrases rather than passwords. So something like Kristof goes to the kitchen as a passphrase rather than a password. Those are ways that you can increase your security just by, and password reuse. Number one way to have people and your accounts breached is password reuse. Your accounts will be breached on public services such as Netflix, etc. If you use the same password there as you do on your email, it is a really simple way for cyber criminals to be able to get onto your email accounts, access all your personal information, and again, try and use those same passwords and same credentials on your banking and business applications. So please, number one rule, do not use the same password on all your platforms. Password reuse is a really bad way for cyber criminals to get access to you. Now, as always, we loved your questions this week. There is a ton coming through. I do have a special session coming on Microsoft Intune because I know we've had a lot of questions around it. How can I use that more effectively in my organization? So we'll be definitely doing a session on that in the next week or so. As always, cloud security. I know you've asked a lot around that, and so I'll try in a bit more detail around that. I know cloud security is important, but in the same light, it is not out of the box. So we will do a session on what you need to be mindful of. In the meantime, be safe out there. Think before you click.
Take care.
And we'll see you next.
Be a bit wet this weekend, so be good.
Well, hopefully not. But yeah, we'll see you all same time next week. Thanks for joining me. Kristof here and
David.
Signing out. Bye now.